Good morning and welcome everybody out there at Global Equine and Equestrian Coaching and those who may be watching the replay in the future. Today we have the amazing Melissa Jean located in Redding, Connecticut. She does so many cool things, folks. She is a board certified Hippotherapy Clinical Specialist. Isn't that a mouthful? She is a physical therapist. She is an Equine Specialist certified through PATH and EAGALA. And not only that, she does a Reiki as a practitioner and she does trauma-informed stretching as a practitioner, which I'm super curious how that all like winds together. And she is the clinical director. Yes,
Yeah.
clinical and director at Endeavor Therapeutic Horsemanship Incorporated. Bam!
There you go.
So many things to remember. Today, Melissa and I are going to be talking about horse welfare, equine welfare, since there might be some donkeys in there somewhere or mules, and we don't like to discriminate. And we'll also be talking about partnering with horses and trauma survivors and making sure we match kids and their horses properly for both the kid and the horse based off of ability and personality. Melissa, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh my goodness, thanks for having me. This is so fun.
You're very welcome. So you do so many different things and just profoundly impacting the world and your community. Tell us a little bit more about your personal journey and what got you started in all of this.
So, my personal journey starts out just like everyone else's when you're a little kid thinking about what you want to do with your life. And I always knew I wanted to help people in whatever way I could. And originally I thought it would be nursing. And so I tried to be a nurse. I went through LPN school and I ended up passing out, putting an IV in when I was working at a hospital. And literally my supervisor was like, Melissa, just go down to the therapy section, sit on the plinth, relax for a little bit. And I did, and I never went back upstairs. I saw what these therapists, these PTs and OTs and speech therapists were doing. And I was like, this is amazing. And there's no body fluids. I was like, even better. Like that's perfect. I was like, there's no blood. It was so much nicer. And that's what started me on the career of physical therapy. And before I went to PT school, I was actually a physical therapy assistant at a really great program in Buffalo, Villa Maria College. It's an amazing program. And the instructors there, talked one day, it came up in discussion about hippotherapy. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And I just kind of put it in, my back pocket and continued on, got into PT school, got my master's and found out about this program down in New Jersey called Special Strides, an amazing facility. And I ended up being there for almost 6 or 7 years. And they really took me under their wing and showed me how to properly partner with horses to improve the lives of our participants, but also the horses. And even I was, you're trying to learn the nuts and bolts of hippotherapy and how the movement can really impact that of the individual that's riding bareback. So I was trying to really, hone those skills, but subconsciously I was also absorbing all of the equine welfare knowledge that they were kind of shooting at me. And, the span for a career for a horse in a lot of therapeutic settings is pretty low. It's usually about 4 years, the last research I saw.
Wow.
And Special Strides has horses. I mean, there were horses there that taught me in, 2006 who are still there.
Wow.
So they are doing a remarkable job at their equine welfare and truly making those horses partners. And so that, I continued there until I moved to Westchester, New York. And all of a sudden there was nowhere for me to work here. I was like, oh my goodness. So I made my own practice. I started my own physical therapy practice.
Nice.
And it's just evolved and grown. And, about 5 years ago, probably 6 years ago now, Endeavor Therapeutic Horsemanship in Bedford, New York, was a brand new program. And I met with the executive director, Emily Bushnell there. And I was like, this is what I wanted. It was like bringing Special Strides to Bedford. And now it's just an amazing relationship. They truly partner with their horses. Our horses are our co-workers, and they are treated as such. And that is so important. And so here I am. And as my own personal journey unfolded, I am also a trauma survivor. And, we're always on that personal journey, whether you're a trauma survivor or not, we're always on a personal journey to be the best version of ourselves. And just through helping myself with the trauma-informed stretching and yoga and Reiki, I realized that there was a huge potential to partner trauma survivors with horses. But it needed to be done in a way that is truly partnering. Because if you are working with a horse that is stressed out, that cardiac coherence is not going to match, and it's not going to be beneficial. And that's why hosting the course originally now at Endeavor has been so beneficial, because the horses, they are our partners. We truly care for them and love them. And if they're not in the mood to work a day, we understand, just as if I would understand if one of my coworkers was having a hard day and maybe moving a little slower than they should. I wouldn't take a whip to them and be like, get moving, guys, we got to work, like that's not how we function. And so by knowing your horses, truly knowing your horses and partnering with them is where the magic happens. Because isn't that what we all want? Connection with each other and understanding of each other.
Absolutely. I want to reel it back for just a minute.
Go for it.
And then Tyler, I'm definitely going to have you pop in with your question or comment. So for people that are watching that don't know what hippotherapy and cardiac coherence are, if you could just define those terms for our audience.
Sure. So hippotherapy is a term used to describe what happens when a PT, OT, or speech practitioner utilizes equine movement. And cardiac coherency there has two different definitions floating around, which is really frustrating because it makes it hard for people to understand what it truly is. Some people explain cardiac coherency as your heart rate variable, which is the timing in between your breath and your heartbeat, because that is a timed variable. That is not the way cardiac coherency is being used in the research right now. The way it's being used right now, cardiac coherency means picking up the energy of those around you by their heartbeat, right? So horses have a much lower heart rate than humans. Well, ours is usually, on the average day, we like to be around 70. I mean, there's people are sometimes in the 90s, 90 beats per minute. A horse is at 40. So a horse, when they are just grazing, they are completely relaxed. Their nervous system is calm. And the best way I can describe that to people is, when you walk into a room and someone's in a really bad mood, right? Like they are really angry at the world. You feel that. They don't even have to say anything. They could have a flat affect, and all of a sudden you're like, "Ooh, I felt that." The horses do that for us without us even knowing it. There's a reason why especially overworked women love being at the barn. It calms us down. And why is that? Because we are surrounded by this energy that is bringing and grounding us. And slowly science is getting behind this, and it is coming more and more to the forefront. But yeah, that's cardiac coherency in the way that I use it as a term.
Thank you. Yeah, I talk to people about it with the electromagnetic sphere.
Yes.
That's measured, and I feel like it helps people get the visual of how the horse's electromagnetic sphere is created through the heart, scientifically. And because they're so much larger than us, then it envelopes our electromagnetic sphere, which is coming from our hearts and helping to calm us down in that inner lap. And how when they're in their herds, their spheres interact with one another's. Right. And how
isn't that amazing? I love the way that you said that. Yes, it makes it a much easier. I'm gonna have to steal that from you. It's a nice,
yes, do steal it.
Nice visual. It's a beautiful visual that I think people can, because I think that is the thing, right? It gets a little woo-woo-y, people would think, but it's really not. It's energy. But however you can best describe it, and I like that sphere. That's a great analogy.
Thank you, Tyler. Go ahead. You've got a question or comment.
Two questions. It was just occurring to me as Melissa was discussing the heart coherency, that when you approach a horse, if you approach them from the shoulder instead of head on, that's easier for them. But I'm wondering if our hearts can become more coherent because you're approaching them from the side, allowing your heart to be open to them.
It could be, right?
Yeah,
And
that's
then my other
interesting.
question was, what do you think Philly was telling me yesterday when she stepped on my toe?
But she loves you. She's such a sweet girl.
She is.
So horses, like people, have different energetic chakras in the body. And so you can pull up a picture. I wish we had one that we could share on the screen. But it's really fascinating when riding and when positioning yourself and your different concentrations energetically.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Well,
Yes.
Yeah.
and the breathing allows a coherency with your horse. I was once part of a demonstration. I was a member of the International Association of Labyrinth Builders. And I went to their annual meeting and they wanted me to give a riding demonstration with a chevron that had been set up. And the horse I was using was a long-backed, arthritic old hunter. I mean, when I rode him through that chevron the first time, it was like I had a semi-trailer. The front went around and then the back came around. And there was this German dressage trainer there. And he said, okay, just ride through. He said, now you're going to come back and I'm going to coach you on breathing. And he coached me on how to breathe. And that horse became like a Grand Prix dressage horse, totally in a frame, bending, bending, bending. It was like magic, complete magic. But that's another way of speaking heart coherency, I believe.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. Like part of what I do is doing clinics and helping to teach people how their energy and the tightness and pain in their body affects their horses under saddle and on the ground, since I'm also a massage therapist. So we can have
Well, I'm going to have to raise my hand again. Melissa and I have both recently, or maybe me recently, Melissa not so recently, discovered Dr. Mate, Gabor Mate, and his book on When the Body Says No is, I mean, all his books are astounding, but When the Body Says No, gives a lot of information.
So much information, and so much of it, I think we all need to know, right? Like, because our body does hold all of that. And if you talk to equestrians who have been riding for a long time, they all have complaints of aches and pains. And so much, and I'm like, oh my goodness, as a PT, we tried at Endeavor to do a little PT clinic. So I was going to help everybody, right? I was going to help everyone, and they've all been riders forever. And oh my word, it literally blew my mind how much was going on in these young bodies. And so much of it, I think, was just because they weren't truly, and not to their fault, it was just how they were trained, but not truly partnering with the movement of the horse and kind of riding with their agenda without thinking about that movement, right? And so they're riding against the movement, and the horse would get injured, and they get injured. And that's fascinating to me. When I look at riders and the amount of injuries that happen, chronic injuries over time, right? Like we're talking about like the tendonitis, not from a fall, but just those gradual ones that kind of build up in your body from these events happening over and over and over again. It's amazing.
Yeah, and we talk about how the horses can calm us down, but also being accountable in when we see that our horses are nervous, like really coming into our center and grounding and working on our breathing and relaxing our whole being, and seeing them helps them to calm down too. So it goes both ways.
So, and there'll be times, we'll be in a therapy session with our horse, and maybe the child has a seizure, or maybe the child's energy is really like an excited nervousness, right? And the horse starts picking up on that and acting in the behaviors that we know, like getting a little like heady, or maybe pawing a little bit. We always will stop, and everyone in the team needs to take a deep breath. Take a deep breath and relax, because that horse was then picking up on the collective energy of our group, who we were all like, the kids doing whatever. And it affects the horse. And one of the last session in the Finding Peace in the Paddock, we do leading, but it's with your breath. So it's all about breath work and showing how you can change a horse's speed just by increasing your breath and energy and decreasing it. And this last group that I just had in November, there was a veterinarian in the group, and she was so funny. She was like, I just need to see if this works, because she has a very analytical brain, right? She's got a science brain. And she comes back to me, and she had one of our horses, Pearl, who's very in tune with energy, like trotting. And the girl that was helping me, the coworker helping me, was like, do you mean to do that? And she's like, oh yeah. And she just brought that horse right back down. And she's like, this is amazing. Like, blown away. She's like, I have, been around horses for her whole life. She went to veterinarian school. Never in her life did she think about her energy and what it's doing to the horses she's treating. And how something as simple as her breath work improved her relationship with this horse that she had never met before. And it was really cool.
It's incredible stuff. I had interviewed Claire Frost, who's in England, and she actually created a breathing technique to help the horses with breathing that actually helps with sweet itch and cribbing and weaving. And and it's free. It's free on her website and whatnot for Claire Frost in England. And so as we breathe and help regulate our bodies and how that affects us on our system, horses breathing properly in helping their system can just go throughout that different physiological step that then helps them, and also saves us money if they're cribbing, because that can be super obnoxious. And
I mean, and it's not healthy for them, it's
not. There's so many pieces, but there's just so much out there that we can learn as equestrians. Like, it doesn't matter if you've been doing it for 50 years, there's so much out there. Tyler, I love how engaged you are. Ask another question.
Supposedly, one of the reasons of cribbing is they were weaned too early.
That's interesting.
I've heard that too. And we do have one horse at Endeavor that is a cribber.
Oh yes, he's a cribber.
And man, we love this horse. I mean, he has dedicated his life to helping people. And now he's, nearing retirement. And he's only doing ground sessions and with our veteran population and specific groups. But we as a group have really collectively been trying to, we're trying Reiki on him and T-touch. And of course, all of our horses get, acupuncture and chiropractor or MagnaWave. Like, they get it really nice.
That's awesome.
But we are even taking it even further with him, because we see it and I'm like, he's not present when he's doing it. And let's try to help him be more present, because he is such a beautiful light when he's present, when he's not, being a real stubborn boy like he can be, but he's got so much to give, and so we just want to try to help him with that. So cribbing is very close to my heart at the moment.
Yeah, well, if you try it, let me know how it goes. I'm always curious.
I will. I'm going to check out this Claire Fox.
Yeah, Frost. Yeah, also I can send you the Frost. Yeah, I can send you the link to the YouTube interview I did with her.
Yes, thank you.
Last year. Yeah, you're welcome. And it's interesting as we talk about energy and how it affects the horses, as we lean into the equine welfare piece, because that is a very deep and nuanced aspect of how do we provide these services to different communities while also honoring the horses, because our energy does affect them, and people that have experienced trauma, you've done the trauma-informed stretching, so you can, and being a trauma survivor, you can speak up to us a little bit about that if you're open.
I'm sorry, I read Tyler's question and I missed your question.
It's totally fine. I love the honesty. You're good, Tyler. I will be happy to send it to you as well. So my question was just really checking in, and how in therapeutic riding centers, equine assisted learning, and mental health facilities, where we are working with more vulnerable populations, that their energy is not necessarily as regulated, their bodies are unbalanced, and how that affects the horses that are doing the work. And on a deeper level, a more nuanced level, how are we honoring the equine welfare when putting them in the position to energetically engage with populations that struggle to regulate their emotions and energy?
That is such a powerful question. And I'm so thank you for repeating it, because it really is. I want to make sure I can do the best justice I can for it. So here's the thing, right? Every horse is not appropriate to be in a therapy session or a therapeutic riding program, right? Just like not every person, an accountant isn't necessarily going to be a great physical therapist. So horse selection, when you're working in a center or when you're looking for a horse yourself, horse selection is paramount. Making sure that you are taking the time to get to know a horse before you actually put them into the program, and making sure that once they come to your program, that you give them time to acclimate to the whole new environment. The water tastes different, the sounds are different, the sun looks different, everything is different. The feed might be different, the hay is different. Like letting them truly decompress before you add on. And our barn manager and program director at Endeavor is amazing at doing this. And it's the reason why our horses are as successful as they are. But that's where it starts, right? So it all starts with you meeting the horse, you seeing what that horse wants to do, because some horses love barrel racing. And so let them go do barrel racing. Some horses love jumping, let them do jumping. But and no matter what you're doing with the horses, you also have to let them be a horse.
Yeah.
That is how you show them the connection and the compassion, by letting them, sleep out at night if it's safe and possible in your area. Let them be under the stars. Let them, graze and roam as much as possible. Let them be horses. They also get a choice in that sense, right? And it's fascinating. We had one horse come to Endeavor, and he would get so nervous if he was out in the back paddock. He wanted to be in his stall. The stall was his safe place. And that was just from his background. So what slowly we did is we said, you know what, we're not going to make him go out there because we say it's best for him. He is really communicating to us that he needs to be in his stall. So we put him in his stall. Once he realized that we were going to listen to him and he was safe, gradually he started getting turned out more and more and more. And now he sleeps outside and he never comes in. But it all starts with just the connection of listening to what they're saying, and setting that horse up for success. Just like I would for any of the children that come to see me, or any of the parents that come to see me, you set them up for success. That's where it starts. And then you build that foundation of trust, and then you can move forward. And it also goes in the same end of when a horse is getting ready to retire, listening to that horse, taking yourself out of the equation, stepping back and saying, you know what, you're right. It's time for you to retire. Even though I want you to work forever and I love you and I'm going to miss you. That horse does get a chance to say it. Yeah. And the beautiful part with a lot of the, equine assisted learning programs, and, like the EAGALA programs, these might be great alternatives for some horses that for whatever reason don't want to be ridden, can't be ridden, but still want to connect with people. Yeah. And I always get so frustrated when people think, so I have my horse who's retired in my backyard with a donkey. And the first question everyone always asks me is so do you ride him? And I'm like, no, I don't. And they're always like, well, why do you have a horse then? Well, there's so much more to having a horse than just getting on their back. And it's not for a lack of me asking. I'll take a bareback pad to Smokey and he adamantly tells me no. So you know what? We don't ride, and I don't need to ride. I can do so much with him on the ground. And so I think a lot of times we get stuck with a horse fitting the job that we want it to do, instead of really meeting the horse where it's at and where it wants to go. And I love when I hear stories of people who are like, oh, Johnny outgrew his jumper, right? Because kids, as they're going through the process of, riding, and if they're showing, they outgrow horses all the time. What happens to those horses? A lot of times they're sold, and that's fine if that's what you have to do. Just, make sure that horse is going somewhere well. But I love when they keep the horse and then free lease it to someone else or lease it to someone else, but they still keep ownership so they know where that horse is. to me, that's showing gratitude for everything that horse has given you.
Yeah.
It's got to be a two-way relationship of appreciation. And that's my hope for all horses in this world, that they will have a safe place to land when they are done.
Yeah. I mean, because life happens, and sometimes no matter
Yes.
how much you would like to keep your horse, that's just not something that's possible.
Absolutely. And there is no judgment in that, because it happens. It could happen to me, right? Like I would never judge someone for doing it, because I know how quickly that could happen to me, right? Like all it takes is a couple turns of bad luck around the corner, and it can happen. And when it happens, you honestly, everyone just has to try their best.
Yeah.
And that's how it does.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I really appreciate you diving into all of that. And I would like to take it another step, because I think a lot of people sometimes don't know the difference between a horse that is shut down and calm because of
Yes.
that, and a horse that is just like really balanced and easygoing. Just like we have people who are really easygoing, and then you have some people that are bottling up all their emotions until they blow up.
Yeah. No, and I mean, I'll be brutally honest with you guys here. So my own horse, Smokey, who's retired in my backyard, is, first off, the love of my life. But besides that, he's amazing. But when I first started, he and I were, it was just he and I and a small team of girls working. And then we moved to Endeavor, and Endeavor is a big program, right? He shut down. And I didn't pick it up right away. And this is me, like, I did not pick this up right away. And why did I not pick it up? Probably because I wanted it to go well. Probably because my intention was that I wanted it to work. Right.
Totally.
And what happened? He got ulcers, and he had some problems, and he was communicating to me, and thank goodness Danielle, our program director, is amazing. And she told me, and I know it was not an easy thing for her to tell me. She's like, Melissa, Smokey's ready to retire. Like, she gave me a full year warning when she was like, he's getting ready to retire. And she did that for him, and also for me, because she knew that it was going to take me a process to work without him.
Yeah.
And so that was my learning of like, wow, a horse can shut down. And it does look like they're being very agreeable and up for anything. But it's coming from a very different place. But isn't that what we all do? At least most survivors do. When you're put in a situation that is uncomfortable and overwhelming for your sensory system, we shut down. And some people are better at masking it than others. But it happens to people too. So how do you know when that's happening, right? There are some really cool cortisol tests now that you have your veterinarian run a cortisol test, see the stress level in your horse. If you're uncertain, it's a simple blood test. That for me, like because I am still learning, I'll always be learning to learn those cues in equines, but just having that number gives me an idea of where the horse's stress level is and kind of what to expect from them at that point. So there are ways, like, and I would encourage anyone, right? If you think your horse is acting a little strange, you would pull a line tighter, right? You would have all of these things checked out. Check out the cortisol levels. It can't hurt if you're already pulling blood for something else. And you're really uncertain until you get to know that horse truly inside and out. Pull the titers and pull the cortisol. Check out that stress even before you supplement, because don't waste the money on supplementing. He might not need it. Maybe he's a really good, agreeable horse.
Yeah, right. No, I love that you brought that up. I didn't actually know that about pulling blood for the cortisol levels. And yeah, it's cool to get to learn new things and how we can support our horses.
So much stuff out there. And, the only reason I knew about the cortisol is they had done research looking at horses that worked in therapeutic riding centers and horses that were race horses and horses that were show horses to see whose cortisol levels were the highest. And so that is what had given me the idea of like, oh, I could even just ask my vet. And the first time they might look at you because it's not a common request.
Yeah.
Although I think, maybe it could become more, of a common request, especially if you're dealing with a horse that has ulcers and different things, to take it a little bit further. Even a horse that's cribbing a lot, right? Checking it out, making sure that horse is not suffering from something. Maybe the cortisol level will tell you if there is pain somewhere in that horse that you're not picking up. Remember, those horses are so stoic. They're gonna hold it, right? Because they don't want to be vulnerable, just like we don't. And so showing that weakness is something that they're going to hide. But by doing something as simple as a cortisol test, you can absolutely, kind of start down the right path if they are in stress.
Definitely. And you brought up what I feel like is an important thing for people to think about, because even though you loved your horse and you wanted what's best for your horse, you still miss those initial signs. And oftentimes people, we get so caught up in our day-to-day lives. And if we're stressed out about something and our bandwidth is low, we can miss those signs of our own intuition, and understanding the difference between what intuition feels like in our bodies and what a fear or trigger feels like in our bodies. Because one you should listen to that won't ever lead you astray, and the other one you have to tease out a little bit and be like, okay, what do I need to do to pragmatically address what I'm afraid of while still honoring what is there to keep myself and others safe. And you can't catch that intuition that your horses need you to have sometimes if you're too focused on everything else and you don't take a moment to ground and really come into yourself, both for your own safety and that of your community, be it horses or humans.
So much. Oh my goodness, so much. There is an amazing book called The Compassionate Equestrian. I don't know if you have read it, Elysia. Have you read it, Tyler?
Most of it, yes.
Okay, this guy, he's a veterinarian. He happens to be in the Westchester, New York area. And he talks about how before he goes into a barn, he always takes 10 minutes to ground himself in the car. And he does that because he's going into the horse's house. And he wants to make sure he is present to meet the horse's needs when he goes into their house. And that was so profound to me, because if you think about how we like march into the barns, we drop our stuff, who knows, we bring the entire day's, bad energy with us. And then the horses just are there, and we're not truly paying attention because we are so much in our own head. And it happens to the best of us, right? It's just, you just have to try to keep it so that, when you walk in, you're truly paying attention to the horse, and paying attention to the horse, listening to the horse, really listening to the horse, and not saying, oh, it'll be fine. You know what? In my head, when Smokey was getting ready to retire, I was like, well, how am I going to, there was he was very good at very difficult riders. He loved seizure disorders. He loved the harder the ride, the better for him. He loved it. Not many horses will tolerate what Smokey was tolerating. And I was like, well, how am I going to service these children? And it became a very interesting, I was like, well, but Smokey needs help, but these kids need help. And it really did take a long time for me to piece it out. And again, thank goodness for my coworkers, because they were like, listen, Elysia, these are some ideas. Like, when you are so stuck, you need someone who can give you like, oh, but Abby might be able to take this person. And so maybe this person will miss a couple weeks while we get somebody else ready. And able to make that balance so that I didn't feel like I was failing both, both parties. I didn't want to fail my amazing horse equine partner, and I didn't want to fail my clients. And so that is anyone who partners with horses for helping others, we run into this. We're going to run into this problem. And at the end of the day, we have to make sure it's equal. We cannot help people at sacrificing our equines, and vice versa. And it's a difficult balancing act, but it's one that is needed. And one that we just have to keep a constant tag on. And yes, it's frustrating when, Abby doesn't want to work. And it's frustrating when that happens, but you know what? She's going to work so much harder the next day because we listened to her. And so maybe Johnny didn't get on today. We did inside clinic work, and that's okay. It's just having that compassion for them.
Absolutely. And then you're modeling for the human beings what it is to adapt and
Yes.
have grace and patience and reverence for the horses, and being able to be like, okay, here are the boundaries for today. And how do we communicate our needs and respect others and creatively problem solve to do what we need to serve our bodies?
Yes,
Fill the space.
for sure.
Is there anything else you'd like to add to the aspect of equine welfare and the difference between using horses, quote unquote, and partnering with horses?
No, it's, you know what, it's an ongoing process for everyone. I mean, I like I just told you, I was not very inept at it myself. And even though it's something that's so dear to my heart, it can get difficult.
Yeah.
And so I have found, and it took a while, I beat myself up over what I did to Smokey and making him work as long as I did. And I didn't make him work. He was still doing it pretty willingly. But he had been showing me and I didn't listen. And once he got to my house, it took me a good year for him to let me groom him. He was so done with me. He was like, listen, you didn't listen to me. This was not okay. And I took it. I was like, buddy, you are right. You can be as feral looking as you want. Like, this is your retirement. You deserve all of it. And so that, I turned that judgment that I was placing on myself, and I'm just focusing it all on him in a kind, compassionate way of saying, I am completely listening to you now. Whatever you want, this is what we're going to do. And so I'm thankful that I have the opportunity to do that with him. Yeah. Because it's very important to me that my horses know just how much I appreciate them. And I'm going to do my best not to do it again. Might I make the mistake? Absolutely. But I'm truly making the intention to not do it again. And that's where it all lies, is in our intentions, right? And that's what drives our behaviors and our motives for everything, is the intention behind your actions. So my intention is never to use a horse when it doesn't want to work. My intention is always to partner. And I'm getting better at observing, and I'll keep getting better at observing. And each horse is going to show me something different. And I'm just going to do the best I can.
Mm-hmm.
Tyler, jump right in there.
Languaging.
Yes.
Start with the positive. Your intention is to always know where your horse is and use them that way that's best for you and your horse.
Mm-hmm.
Leave out the never and the, that sets up a negative framework. If you always state in the positive, your brain can process this. Our brains do not process negatives. In order to process a negative, like, don't think of blue. Mm-hmm. You had to think of blue.
I had to think of blue, right? Yeah.
So that's why this is from neurolinguistic programming, which is a whole nother amazing thing, which I studied. So keeping yourself in the positive. And the other great thing from that and from other studies is, each day when you start out, I send 3 great thoughts to 3 friends of mine. We trade each other gratitudes each morning.
Oh, that's so sweet.
What's your story going to be today? And you can rewrite it. Like, if you've gone for an hour and a half and things are really not going the way you want, stop your day, take some deep breaths, and rewrite your story, and then live into it.
I love that, Tyler. Yeah.
That's really beautiful. Thank you for your share.
You're welcome. Well, we'll see. I don't know about you, but I'll see Melissa a lot. So she'll be for me.
That's funny. And then you had a really important point in regards to matching children with horses with their personalities and abilities.
Yeah. So that's all, as a physical therapist using equine movement, of course, all children walk differently, all people walk differently, all horses walk differently. And depending on the neurostatus of that child and, whatever they are dealing with, you want to make sure that horse is matched appropriately with the child so that you are getting the best outcome that you possibly can. And so automatically you can do something as simple as looking at how many steps per minute a child takes. Now, children have shorter legs, right? So they take more steps in a minute than a grown adult. So what that would tell me right there is that most toddlers are going to do best on ponies because ponies take more steps per minute than like a thoroughbred. Also, children, when they walk, they're not graceful. They're toddlers for a reason. Like they literally toddle, right? Exactly. And they're heavy on their feet. Like there's no motor grading. They're just kind of plomping around. And ponies love having that choppy gait. So let them feel what is neurologically appropriate for their body to feel at that moment. If I put a 3-year-old on a thoroughbred, I am just disorganizing. That body is not ready for the fluid input that I am going to impose on it. So by matching it appropriately, you give them the best chance for the most functional outcomes. Same thing as if you have a child who maybe they're a hemi. So maybe the left side is weaker due to, injuries or at birth or whatever that child is dealing with. So maybe you have a horse that's slightly asymmetrical. Utilize that, use that horse's asymmetry to help your child with asymmetry. There are also ways, I have put different Davis boots on my horses to change a little bit more of what the input that they are giving, or even to make them a little bit more lopsided. And again, you do this where you need to make sure you know your horse. You need to make sure that the horse is tolerant of whatever you're trying to do. And you need to make sure that the horse is okay with it afterwards. So this was a progress for me of like trying to make my horses a little more asymmetrical, but then afterwards making sure that they were back in alignment and where they should be so that I didn't leave the horse asymmetrical. Because again,
and you're like
partnering,
massage, chiropractic, doing different groundwork training to rebalance them, stretching.
Exactly. So you go through, and this is also, I want to preface, I did not make a very old arthritic horse in balance. This was a very young 6-year-old horse. But you have to partner that, right? Like you have to make sure that it's appropriate to do with that horse. You need to know what is appropriate and not, but utilizing the horse's movement to get the best functional outcomes for your children. And it's all looking at the biomechanics and the conformation of the horses. And that's the nuts and bolts. Just like for PT, our nuts and bolts are knowing your anatomy and physiology and muscle composite. You need to know all of that for horses if you're truly going to partner well. And that education is so important. And I know everyone loves talking about horses. It's very romantic and people love them. And all of that is true. All of that is true. But if you don't understand the foundation of why you're putting that child on a horse, then please don't put them on a horse. You're not going to keep them safe. This is a huge animal we're talking about with a brain of its own and has no idea what you are doing if you're just slapping kids on and taking them for pony rides. You're not going to get the benefit you want. It's not going to give you the results. Really get the education behind what you want to do. And it's beautiful and amazing and all of those things that you think it is. And it's even more so when you're educated to do it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm super curious if there are any types of people that work well on gaited horses.
Oh my goodness. So we play with gated horses all the time. We have 2 of them at the farm.
What kind?
What we have I think, what the heck is Abby? She's a fox or a Missouri trotter?
Missouri fox trotter.
I'm not sure. Missouri
fox trotter. And then Philly is our little, she's our little Icelandic pony. So she's got her tolt in her. So Abby doesn't know how to sustain her gait. So she's a little bit like of a mixed bag, but she gives amazing movements. Some horses, we were working with some of the horses yesterday. We have a Frisian Persian mix. And so I had a couple people on and we were doing the biomechanics of the horses, and it's fascinating. Abby by far has been giving us the most rotational component. which is really fascinating because I didn't think she would. Being a gaited horse, they don't always have that diagonal that we're looking for to give the rotation, and she does. So, I need to play with it more. You don't see many gaited horses in programs, and I think it's just because it can be a little intimidating to play with. But she gives an amazing amount of movement. So those are the only two that I have like the experience with. But there is a place for them for sure, because, especially when you're talking about, looking at the autistic population and some of the sensory needs that those children have, the sensory input coming from a truly gaited horse that knows and is strengthened in those gaiting patterns can be really beneficial and impactful. There is a purpose for them in the therapeutic world. You, again, just need to know the nuts and bolts of the biomechanics conformation and how that impacts your participant.
Absolutely. And for anybody listening who's not aware of the horse boy method and being down in Texas with Rupert Isaacson, you should definitely check it out. He's got an amazing program down there. Yeah. And then we have the last little bit. Did you want to speak on any part of partnering horses with trauma survivors?
So this is this is my newest adventure down this road. And I developed a program called Finding Peace in the Paddock, and it's really been amazing. And so what we do is it's a lot of the cardiac coherence. And so I've run 2 groups of women through it so far, and the results are just blowing my mind. It's been amazing. These women are giving me such beautiful feedback. And I truly think by being with the horses, being in a safe space and allowing that cardiac coherency to help you, even though you're not even aware it's helping you, it allows them to feel safe and connected to the people around them, which as a trauma survivor is key to healing. We need to feel connection, even though sometimes that connection is scary and we might try to avoid connection because it is scary, and you can get hurt when you connect with people sometimes. So I think naturally we try to disconnect, but the horses don't quite allow you to do that. And by being with the horses, it's not intimidating, right? The horse truly meets you where they are. We don't have to worry about, well, is he making fun of me in his head, or is he just doing this because I want? No, a horse is going to do what he's going to want to do. And they're not lying to you. It's totally transparent communication with the horses. And for trauma survivors, this gives them a nice, safe place to begin experimenting with the connection and without judgment. And the hope is that over time, that connection, that they can then take that out into the world and maybe start connecting maybe with their children on a deeper level or their spouse on a deeper level. Because trauma you don't fix trauma. You live with trauma. It ebbs and flows. Some days are better than others. And the best that you can do to partner and connect with people that understand that in you, the better version you're going to be of yourself. But when we are afraid to connect, we're afraid to tell people. And so then people don't know where we're coming. We're not being transparent. We're on the inside, we're scared. And so maybe we're lashing out. But by developing those connections with people that understand, they will then give you the safe foundation. So it's a multi-layer kind of effect. And, I'm still playing with it. But the results so far have been just amazing. And it's been healing for me to see these women like making connections with each other, having better connections at work. It's been amazing. And so that's where I see myself really kind of going, and having the physical therapy background and the Reiki and the trauma-informed stretching, that's all incorporated into Finding Peace in the Paddock, because we need to connect with ourselves first. Absolutely. And until you can feel what your body is telling you, it's going to be very hard to make connections outside. And so not only does the horse allow us to connect with them, but they are beautiful mirrors to show you what's going on the inside of you. because they are picking up what your internal dialogue is, not your external. And so by having the horse kind of show it back to you in a non-judgmental way, you can be like, oh yeah, I am kind of coming in hot here, aren't I? Like, and reframe it and acknowledge that feeling in yourself. Don't judge it. We all do it. It's fine. But once you acknowledge it, you can change it. So yeah, it's beautiful because we purposely start very slow. And we don't meet the horses. The first day there's a horse demonstration and we are in the paddock with the horses, but I purposefully don't allow contact on that first day because like we had spoken about, people are coming in with all sorts of energy, right? And they are excited. And so the last thing I want to do is put my horses in a situation to deal with more energy than they need to. So let's partner with them and let them have the space, let them feel the energy from the distance, be able to move as they want. They are not, on cross ties or anything. They are free to move. And then the next day when people come there, the next time they come, they're usually calmer. And they're more present, right? Because we've kind of gone through a little bit. So yeah, it's a gradual process that we go through. And it's just been fun.
Oh, that's beautiful. I really appreciate you sharing all of that, sharing everything that you've shared today. It's been fantastic. And how you're showing up for your community and for your horses. It's really beautiful.
Thanks. And thank you for everything you're doing. I mean, you are at the top notch trying to like make a difference. And so you have my utmost respect. And any way that I can help you spread the word for this equine welfare, I am more than happy to.
I really appreciate that. Thank you. Danielle, Tyler, is there anything that you would like to share, ask questions before we close it up here shortly?
I'd just like to say thank you for letting me join you today. It's wonderful.
Thanks for coming, Tyler.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for showing up. It makes such a difference to get to have another person hop on and ask questions and share some of their journey.
And Melissa, as I said in my text, I can't wait to do the program.
I know. I can't wait to have you.
It'll be fun.
It will. It's a lot of fun.
Well, Melissa, the last question we always have in the interviews is who inspires you in the world today?
Oh boy.
And Tyler, you can add yours too to that, and Danielle, if you would like.
Yeah. I have so many people that inspire me every day.
We're a bunch of them out there. It doesn't have to be one.
Yeah, no, I mean, the women I work with inspire me every day. The women at Endeavor, especially the executive director, Emily Bushnell, inspire me every day to be a better person for the community and for every animal person in the community. And then, of course, like Tyler said, right now we're really heavy into Dr. Matei. So his work is amazing and profound. And he is so authentically open. And that's true healing. And that's the healing power, is being authentic. And so I respect the heck out of him because he is showing up, putting himself out there, and also trying to make a difference, but not in a way, he's meeting you at your level. He's like, listen, I got faults too. Like, I understand, but let me show you what I've learned, and I'm still working on it too. And that's a person that I can wholeheartedly respect.
I think I would have to entirely agree with Melissa. Emily is one of I consider her a mentor. Mm-hmm. All of the women at Endeavor. I would add in my dear friend and former client who founded something called the Community Mindfulness Group, which is a meditation group. And I have led meditations for them. Gabor Mate, absolutely. And Brene Brown. I mean,
heck yeah. I'm so in love with her. I've listened to almost all of her audiobooks. I feel like at this point, I just discovered her when I was driving across the country right before I moved to Charlottesville, Virginia. I'm so sorry to interrupt. I just get so excited about Brene Brown. I'm just like, yes.
She's so human. I mean, she's a recovering alcoholic. She lost it completely when her plane got canceled. She was missing her kid's soccer game, and she crawled under the t-shirt rack and hid and cried. And, you know, the fact that she could tell us that is just so great.
You know, I need to listen to her books, I think.
Yeah, there's so many great books
yes.
about,
You know
she's
what?
a shame researcher. She researches
Okay.
shame and guilt and talks about vulnerability and belonging and not feeling like you don't belong. And she's a wife and a mother and a business owner and a counselor and you know, like all these different things. I think there's
And a recovering alcoholic.
And yeah, and she's been clean for like a really long time. And she's just an amazing person. If you like my personality, you'll probably like Brene Brown, because she interacts a lot like how I do.
Oh, really? That's so funny. You know, her name has now come to me a couple of times, and I'm like, Melissa, the universe is telling you.
Oh, yes.
She's been brought up many times in my interviews as a person of inspiration across the board from different people in the world. And so that's why I was finally like, okay, fine, I'll listen to her while I was driving.
I've read everything, and I've actually taken notes, and I actually have my favorite things from Brene Brown stored in my computer, and I can go and pull them out when
That's
I want.
awesome. I love it so much. Well, Melissa, where can people find you?
So you can find me at Melissa Jean PT. You can find me at Endeavor Therapeutic Horsemanship. I am around. I am easy, and I love talking to people and connecting. It's what I love the most. So anyone, please reach out if you have any questions or comments about anything. And I would love to hear any feedback too. It's always good.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again so much, ladies, for being on the show today. I really appreciate you. Melissa, I'll have to drive up to Connecticut and come see you and Tyler and Danielle and the whole group.
Oh, that would be great.
We'll try and put together a clinic or something fun.
That'd be fun.
But yeah, thank you everybody so much for watching now or the replays later. If you're watching the replay, please put in #replay in the comments section. And if you want to be on the show or would like to connect with me for empowerment coaching, inspirational speaking, or clinics in the future, you can find me at www.globalequineaffiliates.com. So thanks again, and we will see everybody later. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks so